Jiang Hui never understood why her parents treated her this way, just because she was a girl? Before her wedding, her parents and her in-laws demanded a dowry of 190,000 renminbi. They had agreed on having 60,000 renminbi as a bottom-of-the-box money for the wedding. However, on the day she left for her new family, her mother said that there was only 50,000 renminbi, with 30,000 renminbi in cash and 20,000 renminbi in a bank card. The person responsible for receiving the bride's family's gifts checked on the spot, and it turned out that the bank card was empty. Jiang Hui's groom, Zhu Haikong, looked displeased. He said, "Do you think I'm a fool?" Then he turned and went to toast the guests. Jiang Hui, dressed in festive red, felt a deep sense of injustice. She followed Zhu Haikong, holding back the tears welling up inside her. She couldn't understand why her parents would humiliate her on her wedding day. This was supposed to be the first day of her new life. She thought she could leave the past behind, but now she found it all rather laughable. Fate was like an unbroken thread that never snapped, and she had just turned a corner in it. Jiang Hui bit her lip hard to stop herself from crying. She didn't want to shed tears on her wedding day. In her memory, her family had never been very fond of her. When she was 6, her parents went to work in another city and left her and her 2 brothers in the care of her aunt. It was a nightmare for Jiang Hui. Her aunt wouldn't let her take baths or wash her hair, claiming it was a waste of water. Her aunt had a daughter, who was already in junior high. She often bullied Jiang Hui, taking advantage of her aunt's neglect. Whenever her cousin was in a bad mood, she would twist Jiang Hui's face and make her stand in a horse-riding stance. Jiang Hui would never forget that summer when her cousin punished her for touching her school bag. On a scorching hot day, her cousin stripped her naked and made her kneel on the balcony. Then she invited some village kids to take turns hitting her with clothes hangers. Her cousin even found scissors from home and cut all of Jiang Hui's hair. She warned Jiang Hui, "Listen carefully, if anyone asks, you say you did it yourself. Otherwise, I'll beat you even worse next time." At 6 years old, Jiang Hui had no choice but to cry. That evening, when her eldest brother came home and saw Jiang Hui with a bald head, he angrily asked, "Why did you shave your head?" Jiang Hui, timid and afraid, glanced at her cousin, saying, I did it myself." Her brother raised his leg and kicked her in the stomach, saying, "Are you crazy?" Jiang Hui fell to the ground, gasping for breath in pain. That was her own brother. She couldn't understand why everyone wanted to bully her and mistreat her. Countless nights, the young Jiang Hui would hide under her blanket, quietly shedding tears. Jiang Hui's parents only heard about her abuse from the neighbors a year later. Her mother finally decided to take Jiang Hui with her. Jiang Hui was overjoyed. She packed her little suitcase and escaped from that hateful family. On the way back, Jiang Hui sat on the bus and complained to her mother, saying, "My cousin and brother were so mean, they bullied me every day." Her mother touched her head and said, "Don't resent your brother. He's just a child and doesn't know any better. There will be no one to bully you when you're with me." Jiang Hui hugged her mother's arm and said, "You're the best, Mom." Her mother said, "When you grow up, remember to repay your mom, okay?" "Okay," Jiang Hui agreed wholeheartedly. At that time, Jiang Hui had thought of countless ways to repay her mother when she grew up. She imagined buying delicious food for her, purchasing beautiful clothes, and taking her on trips. However, she never expected that when she grew up, her mother would be waiting for her to repay her in an unexpected way. Jiang Hui's father had been working in the provincial capital, while her mother operated a small shop near a factory. They were so busy that they had little time to look after Jiang Hui, and she essentially grew up on her own. She didn't start elementary school until the age of 9, and her academic performance was never particularly impressive, something her parents never seemed to care about. But for Jiang Hui, just being with her parents was a source of happiness. Even without their attention, she felt warmth. After all, she no longer had to endure the disdain of her aunt and the bullying of her siblings. Jiang Hui dropped out of junior high school. On one hand, her family didn't place much value on education for girls. On the other hand, her elder brother was getting married. Her mother said, "Since you don't love studying anyway, and your brother needs to build a house and get married, you should help the family." Jiang Hui was only a teenager at the time, and she obediently agreed. She didn't yet understand that for a girl in this society, without a diploma and skills, her future options would be severely limited. Soon, Jiang Hui found a job as a waitress at a restaurant, earning 2,500 renminbi per month, which included meals. She kept only 500 renminbi for herself and handed over the rest to her mother. It seemed that Jiang Hui had an exceptional dedication to her family. Even though her older brother had often bullied her in her childhood, as a part of the family, she felt compelled to contribute when her brother was building a new house. Jiang Hui always felt that the more effort she put in, the more her family would love her. During those years, Jiang Hui lived a simple and happy life. Time rushed past, and she turned 20. One day, while on a break at home, Jiang Hui was chatting with a friend on WeChat. Her friend was an amusing guy from northeast China, and he made Jiang Hui burst into laughter. Her mother, sitting nearby, asked, "Who is it?" "A friend." Her mother glanced at the profile picture and asked, "Is it a guy?" Jiang Hui casually replied, "Yeah." That night, her mother told her father that their daughter had grown up and should find a potential husband soon, or she might run away with a man. That year, Jiang Hui was 22. Soon after, her mother introduced Jiang Hui to a young man, Zhu Haikong, through her sister-in-law. The two started chatting on WeChat. One day, Zhu Haikong asked, "Can I be your boyfriend?" Jiang Hui casually replied. In her heart, Jiang Hui didn't find Zhu Haikong particularly attractive. She thought he spoke and acted a bit silly. However, her personal feelings weren't the most critical factor because her mother had already taken a liking to him. During the National Day holiday, Zhu Haikong invited Jiang Hui to visit his hometown. Her mother had already bought the train tickets. Jiang Hui, however, didn't want to go because she didn't have any feelings for Zhu Haikong. But when the long holiday ended, Zhu Haikong showed up unexpectedly. Jiang Hui still didn't want to meet him. Her mother was a bit upset and scolded her, saying, "He's already here. Whether you like him or not, you should at least see him off. Your behavior isn't polite. In the future, when we go back to our hometown, how will you all face each other?" Jiang Hui realized her mother was right. The next day, she took Zhu Haikong out for a day of fun. Zhu Haikong seemed genuinely happy to see Jiang Hui. He said when he first met her, "Wow, you're even prettier in person than in photos." Jiang Hui teasingly asked, "Am I not pretty in my photos?" Zhu Haikong, flustered, quickly replied, No, you're pretty in photos too, very pretty." Then he chuckled, his excitement clear on his face. Jiang Hui found herself laughing at his silly expression. She realized that, even though Zhu Haikong was in his 20s, he still had the innocence of a child. His feelings and emotions were always written across his face. He found wonder in every little thing, and these few days together, he was constantly saying, "Wow," in her ear, as if the world was full of hidden surprises. On the day Zhu Haikong left, Jiang Hui went to the train station to see him off. Before leaving, Zhu Haikong took a silver bracelet out of his pocket and gave it to her. He said, "It's not anything expensive, just accept it." This bracelet was something Jiang Hui had glanced at while shopping, never expecting that Zhu Haikong would quietly buy it for her. Jiang Hui was moved by his small gesture. She hesitated for a moment and gently embraced Zhu Haikong, saying, "Thank you." Zhu Haikong jumped up with joy. Jiang Hui felt that Zhu Haikong wasn't foolish, he was simply pure, like a blank canvas or a glass of water. After Zhu Haikong returned home, he and Jiang Hui began a long-distance relationship online. For the first time, Jiang Hui experienced what it meant to be cared for, the kind of care that cradles you in the palm of someone's hand. Every day, Zhu Haikong would ask her if she had eaten and if she was tired. As the weather turned colder, he inquired if she was dressing warmly enough. He would share anecdotes from his childhood, telling her about his joys and sorrows. However, Jiang Hui rarely talked about herself. Through this comparison, she realized how difficult her journey had been. When she was abused, no one cared. Her academic performance suffered, and no one pushed her. Her parents had invested their energy and finances almost entirely into her two elder brothers, leaving only this occasion to find a husband for her. Several months later, Zhu Haikong's parents visited to discuss marriage. At the dinner table, Jiang Hui's mother raised the topic of the bride price, 190,000 renminbi. Not a penny less. This number startled Jiang Hui. She hadn't expected her parents to ask for so much. Zhu's family found it a bit difficult. Her mother explained, "Raising a daughter is not easy. We've spent a lot of money inside and out, and now that she's getting married, it's time to transfer the responsibility to your family. 190,000 renminbi isn't much. Nowadays, that's the going rate for marriages. Besides, we'll need to contribute part of the bride price to our child." Jiang Hui and Zhu Haikong sat quietly, unable to utter a word. Both of them were feeling nervous. That day, Zhu's parents decided to go back and reconsider. In the evening, Jianghui told her mother, "I really like Haikong. Can't you ask for a little less?" Her mother replied, "What are you thinking? Nowadays, getting married is not that cheap. I'm doing this for your own good. If their family isn't willing to spend this amount, they won't treat you well when you go there. Besides, your second brother is getting married soon, and will need money to build a new house." Jianghui said, "Is this for my second brother? It's not for me, is it?" Her mother, in anger, replied, "I've raised you all these years for nothing. When you were young, you promised to repay me, and now it's time to do it." Jianghui was too upset to respond. The entire night, Jianghui couldn't sleep, her mind in turmoil. She was afraid that Zhu's family would decline, and she would have to leave with Zhu Haikong. She worried about whether she'd ever find someone like Zhu Haikong, who treated her with genuine kindness. However, the next morning, Zhu Haikong's father called and agreed to the 190,000 renminbi bride price. The families would each contribute 60,000 renminbi as the starting fund for the newlyweds' new life. When her mother hung up the phone, she said to Jianghui, "See, I told you. No need to rush." But Jianghui couldn't feel happy. She felt like she hadn't been married off, instead, she had been sold for a good price. The wedding was scheduled for the 16th day of the first lunar month. Jianghui returned to her hometown alone to prepare for the wedding. Before leaving, she said to her parents, "You must come back for the new year too. Otherwise, I'll be alone at home." Her mother replied, "Of course, we'll definitely come back. It's our daughter's last spring festival at home. We have to be with you." However, Jianghui waited alone in her hometown until the 30th day of the lunar month, and her parents still hadn't returned. Her mother explained over the phone, "Triple pay during the spring festival. Your dad wants to earn some extra money." Jianghui asked, "What about you?" Her mother replied, "I can't leave your dad alone here for the new year." Jianghui questioned, "So you're leaving me alone at home for the new year?" Her mother, sounding annoyed, said, "We'll be back on the 16th. Just bear with it for a little while." After hanging up the phone, Jianghui felt extremely aggrieved. She looked at the quiet old house and felt like an old tool, finally completing its mission and abandoned in a corner. She bought fish and meat but didn't feel like cooking. Spring couplets and lucky characters lay on the table without anyone putting them up. The TV played a family-oriented spring festival gala, but the more Jianghui watched, the sadder she felt. Zhu Haikong asked on WeChat, "What are you doing?" She replied, "Just watching TV. My parents haven't come back." Jianghui typed out more words, "What about you?" But after some thought, she deleted the message. She realized that thinking about the lively atmosphere at Zhu's house would only upset herself. That day, Jianghui turned off the TV and prepared to go to bed early. However, a little after 10 o'clock, someone knocked on her door. It was Zhu Haikong, bearing a pile of delicious food. He walked in as if bringing a room full of sunshine. He said, "I guessed you wouldn't have a good New Year's alone, so I came to keep you company." He turned on the TV, helped Jianghui put up the lucky character, and unfurled a string of firecrackers, setting them off with a crackling sound. He said, "Come on, let's dispel any lingering bad luck." Jianghui looked at his cheerful figure and quietly wiped away her tears. She thought, marrying this man, she must be destined for a lifetime of happiness. However, she didn't expect that on the day of the wedding, her mother would still play a little trick on her. At the wedding, Jianghui didn't know how to explain to Zhu Haikong why the agreed-upon 60,000 yuan had been halved. Zhu Haikong's expression immediately darkened. Jianghui followed him to toast the guests, trying to force a bittersweet smile. Zhu Haikong's father-in-law noticed and pulled Zhu Haikong aside to have a private conversation. Jianghui observed from a distance, her heart pounding. She had no idea how this situation would resolve. She had thought she was going to find happiness, but now, when Zhu Haikong came out of the room, his expression had softened. Jianghui approached him with a feeling of unease. He glanced at her and said, "It's our wedding day, why the long face? Are you not upset anymore?" she asked. Zhu Haikong didn't reply. Jianghui inquired, "What did your dad say?" Zhu Haikong, trying to sound casual, replied, "My dad said it's not your fault, the money isn't in your hands, and the exact amount isn't your decision. Anyway, you're my wife now, and we're a family." Jianghui's eyes welled up with tears again. Zhu Haikong pouted and said seriously, "On our wedding day, no crying allowed." Jiang Hui chuckled at his expression but still had tears of happiness glistening in her eyes. Jiang Hui's life after marriage was truly happy. Zhu Haikong and his parents treated her well. In May 2019, she gave birth to a lovely daughter. Zhu Haikong waited outside the delivery room for an entire day. When he heard that Jiang Hui had safely given birth, he was overwhelmed with emotion. His mother-in-law went inside, helped Jiang Hui change her clothes, and wheeled her into the observation room. Zhu Haikong squatted beside her, his eyes red, and said, "You did great, my wife. You're amazing." On that day, Jiang Hui's mother didn't come. In fact, when Jiang Hui was in her confinement month, her mother only came to stay with her for 2 days. Jiang Hui was somewhat disappointed with her, but not as devastated as before. Perhaps, as Zhu Haikong said, she had already found her true family. She just didn't understand why her parents treated her this way, simply because she was a girl? Now that she had her own daughter, she was willing to give her all the love she had. So she truly couldn't fathom her parents' behavior. On her daughter's 100th day, Zhu Haikong prepared a feast, and many neighbors and relatives came. His sister-in-law also attended. She held a child in her arms and said to Zhu Haikong, "Your wife really had a hard life, being raised by others since she was a child." Jiang Hui happened to walk up behind her and asked, "Who was raised by others?" His sister-in-law, upon seeing her, was taken aback and said, "You, ask Haikong about it." Jiang Hui was even more surprised. Zhu Haikong knew more about her background than she did. Under Jiang Hui's probing, Zhu Haikong revealed everything. Jiang Hui was born in the morning and, because she was a girl, was placed in a black bag and given to a childless man in the afternoon. That man was her mother's third brother. However, within 2 years, he fell ill and passed away, and she was passed on to her mother. During their matchmaking, her mother had told Zhu Haikong about this, which explained why she was so adamant about the 190,000 yuan. They had no blood relation, so there was no obligation. Jiang Hui suddenly understood why her relatives at home didn't like her. Her aunt and her family had the audacity to bully her this way. Her mother was willing to spend so much money on her 2 brothers to build houses, but not a single extra yuan on her. But did love only come from blood ties? After so many years of companionship, even a pet would develop affection. Besides, she was their daughter. Jiang Hui really wanted to call her mother and ask what she meant to her. But she was afraid that once she brought it up, there would be no turning back. They might not like her, but they were still her parents. Even if they were stingy, they had given her warmth. If she didn't say anything, she would still be their daughter. If she did, she would truly be an orphan. Zhu Haikong held her and said, "You, try to be more open-minded. It's all in the past now. You have made our child to love you." Zhang Yuina did slightly. But she didn't want to say it. Some desires might fade, but they wouldn't disappear. She had a hole in her heart that had never been filled.